Okay.
How's everyone doing?
How's everybody doing? Woohoo! Okay, so I just want to start off by giving a warm welcome to everyone for coming today and for standing in this beautiful, beautiful, hot summer day, standing around, making sure that we give a warm Davenport welcome to our Prime Minister. Let's give him one big round of applause before I introduce him. I'm going to say a few words before I turn over the microphone to our Prime Minister. When I was blessed to run in 2015, I ran for very specific reasons in this riding. As a feminist, I wanted to see national childcare implemented because I knew that there's no way that we could achieve our potential as a country if everyone didn't have an equal chance to participate in our economy. I also was so embarrassed by the Harper government and their lack of action on climate change. I had co-founded an environmental group called Project Neutral to make sure that individuals, households, and communities would be able to help move themselves towards net zero. And I wanted to make sure I was joining a government and a party that was going to be serious about climate change. I also knew that the Indigenous peoples here in Canada, on a per capita basis, there was not enough money. There was not the same amount of money per child for education and healthcare, and I wanted to make sure that we corrected that. The fourth reason was, as a child of immigrant parents, to me, I really believed what our Prime Minister was saying at the time, diversity is our strength, and at the time, the Harper government was not treating immigrants equally. There was almost like several tiers of immigrants, and in many cases, I felt that many of our new Canadians were treated like suspected terrorists. For me, my Canada includes a Canada where everyone is treated equally, no matter what your background, what your race, what your nationality. And everyone should have an equal opportunity to succeed. And the last reason is because in this beautiful, beautiful riding of Davenport, it's a working class neighborhood. For those that don't know, it's been largely working class, 42% born outside of this country, have this beautiful diversity here. And for me, it wasn't properly funded at a federal level. And so those were all the reasons that I wanted to go to Ottawa. And so I was so delighted when we were first elected, and through the leadership of the amazing Prime Minister who's standing beside me, I will tell you, I'm so proud that he's a feminist. I'm so proud that we led a feminist government, because I will tell you, you might say to us, maybe you're not doing enough on gender equity, maybe you need to do more for feminism, but I will tell you, we have changed the national conversation, and I will tell you now every day we think about gender equality. And we also have introduced a national childcare plan where 8 provinces and territories have now signed on, and we're determined to get it over the finish line. I'll also say on climate, I'm so proud that we have the most aggressive, urgent, and transparent plan to tackle climate change. And to me, I'm so proud of that right now. We have Mark Jacquard, who's from Simon Fraser University, ranking our plan as 8 out of 10 and the best out of all of the platforms. As well, we have Mark Carney, who's indicated that we have one of the best detailed, serious plans to tackle climate change and to meet our targets by 2030. I'll also say I'm really proud of the work we've done on Indigenous peoples here in Canada. $43 billion, 109 boil water advisories eliminated. I'll say to you that we have a lot more work to do, but 200 years of abuse is not going to be eliminated in under 6 years. But I'm proud of the work that we're doing, and we are changing the conversation. When I was running in 2015, almost nobody talked about Indigenous people in Canada. Almost nobody talked about the need for us to have reconciliation and a new nation-to-nation relationship. Now I would say to you, it's 1 in 10 at every door. It is part of our national consciousness. It's a key part of our priorities, and that's something that I'm really proud that as a government we've managed to do. Diversity is our strength. We have had the largest number of immigrants. We've increased the number of immigrants coming to our country. Where when I was first elected, it was around 285,000. Now it's 411,000, more than 1% of our population. And for a number of years, we brought in the largest number of refugees of any country around the world. And I'm also, let's give a big round of applause for that. And I'll also say as the daughter of a Mexican woman, I will say to you, we have done enormous work around making sure that our migrant workers who come here, many of them to help us with our agriculture, many of them to help us within our agricultural sector and making sure food is put on our table. I'm really proud that we have stepped up to improve their rights, to make sure that they're treated properly, and we're going to continue that work ahead as well. And as for funding within Davenport, I don't know if I can necessarily say that's the Prime Minister who helped me sort of do that, but I'll tell you, we were very generous. And Davenport now I've been able to bring an historic amount of funding to this riding for food security, for seniors programs, for Canada Summer Jobs. When I came in 2015, we had $295,000 for Canada Summer Jobs. This year, $1.9 million. And now it's 2019 when we were elected. I'll tell you, no one could predict that that COVID was coming, but I'll say to you, our Prime Minister has demonstrated the ability to handle the unexpected with tremendous leadership, with generosity and great compassion. We are now the top in terms of vaccination rates in the world. We are, if not the most generous programs in terms of support programs, we're among the most generous support programs. We have 92% of the jobs that were lost have been recouped versus 76% in the US. And we have had the backs of Canadians from coast to coast to coast every step of the way, and will continue to do so. And I'll tell you, now we're at the election right now, and for me, it's funny, the media has, you know, what's the ballot question? So for me, I have two key ones. Who do you trust to continue to get you through COVID and to get you to the other side? And the other is, who do you trust to shape the world that you want to live in? And for me, the comparison and the comparison between the platforms and what we aim to do and what we can do as a Liberal team, as a Liberal party, as a Liberal government is completely different. What I say at the door is, and I was whispering to our Prime Minister on the way in, I said, you know, childcare is one of the top ones, you know, one of the top issues in our riding. And I'll tell you, when I tell people that the Conservatives are going to cancel childcare, they get very upset. And I said, we have signed 8 provinces and territories. And my understanding is that if we're blessed to be re-elected, that we'll have Ontario also sign on as well. And that is a big coup for us. And that's huge for Davenport. That's huge for Toronto. And that's huge for all Ontarians. Thank you. I know that also the O'Toole government, I want to say not Harper government, but the O'Toole government will actually follow the Harper climate targets of 30% below 2005, which is taking us way backward at a time where we need to move even more aggressively forward. So I think that, you know, for me, the Conservatives are presenting what seems like more of a shift to the middle, but we are not going to be fooled. We are not going to be fooled. We know that they're going to take us backwards. And I don't trust them, by the way, also in immigration, just from their past actions. And I'll say one more thing, because my main competitor is the NDP here. And often they'll say that the Liberals are not doing anything, but then they take credit for all the things that we're doing. And if you actually look at what's in their platform, we're already doing a lot of the things that they're putting in their platform. National Pharmacare, where Prime Minister said that continues to be a priority. We've already signed an agreement with PEI. We're using that as a base for us to implement there and then expand to the rest of Canada eventually. And then on childcare, we're already implementing childcare. We've already signed agreements with 8 provinces and territories. So for me, we're already doing a lot of the work that's already in the platform there. So I think I could go on and on, but I know it's hot. And I know that all of you want to meet our Prime Minister and take pictures with him. So without further ado, it is the biggest honor of my life to have him visit us here in Davenport, and it's the biggest honor of my life to have worked with him for the last almost 6 years. I'm very proud of his leadership. I'm very proud of what we've been able to accomplish, and I'm very proud of the country that we are creating. Give a warm welcome to the Prime Minister of Canada.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you all for being out here today. Let's hear another huge round of applause for Julie Dzerowicz, who's been just an extraordinary voice for all of you these past 6 years and continues to be unbelievably ambitious, not just for this community, but for this country. Because let's face it, we've been through some really challenging past 18 months as a country, and what we've consistently shown as Canadians is that we have each other's backs. And that's what I see when I look at this sea of volunteers, but it's also what we see when I just stopped in at the downtown hospital to talk about and to thank our frontline health workers who've been doing unbelievable works these past 18 months, but so have all Canadians. You have all stepped up to be there for each other. If there's anything we need to reflect on as we move forward as a country, it's how to really build on both the lessons and the abilities we developed as a country over these past 18 months. And let's be very, very clear. We faced many, many hardships. We faced far too much loss. We faced heartbreak. We faced people making sacrifices. We saw too many kids missing school days and birthdays. We saw seniors isolated to try and stay safe. We saw, people working on the front lines, putting themselves at risk, worried about their families back home, but continuing to show up at work to keep the rest of us safe and fed and supported. We saw the very best of this country, even as we recognized the cracks in our social safety net, the need to do even more to protect and support the most vulnerable. And as we've done that work, as we as a government have been there for people, we've reached a moment where we can see it. We can see the end of this pandemic. We can see the decisions we need to make in order to build back better. And now is the time we get to reach out to Canadians and have them choose the future we have. Personne n'a choisi d'avoir une pandémie, mais personne n'a choisi le gouvernement qu'il voulait dans la pandémie. Mais les Canadiens ont été chanceux que le gouvernement qu'ils avaient pendant cette pandémie avait comme priorité d'aider les gens d'abord et avant tout. Nobody expected this pandemic. Nobody thought about, well, what kind of government would I want in a pandemic? But what Canadians got was a government that had as its fundamental instincts and responsibilities to make sure that Canadians supported each other, that we were there for each other, that we were supporting the most vulnerable, that we were supporting those people who are working so hard to support each other, to create growth, to create opportunities, and that we respected science throughout. These are the things that come through in a crisis. Because in a crisis, all you can really do as you're making thousands of decisions a day, even more than a government usually does, is fold back on your core values. And you know our values as Liberals. Stand up for reconciliation. Stand up for diversity and inclusion. To be there for the most vulnerable, to fight for the middle class and people working hard to join it. That was what we did, and that's what we applied to this pandemic. And because of it, we've come through this pandemic, or approaching the end of this pandemic, in a better situation than just about any other country in the world. And that's not because of us. That's because of you. That's because of Canadians who stepped up continually. And now we need to step up once again. We need to step up and choose what we want for the coming months as we end this pandemic, and choose what we want for this country, not just for the coming years, but the coming decades. Now, I know as all of you are making phone calls and going out door to door, you'll meet with people who say, oh, why do we have to have an election now? And let's be honest, those of you who've been regular door knockers for many more than just this one election will know every election, people are like, oh, really, do we have to have an election again? Yes, at least every 4 years you have to have an election. But this is a moment for an election, because the government, whichever government it is this fall, and I'm certainly hoping it will be our government, will be making decisions that are unbelievably important, not just to end this pandemic, but to set the course for this country for the coming decades. And that's why this choice has to be made now. And remember, before we can do anything around rebuilding better for the coming years, we have to end this pandemic. And we are the only party with a plan to end this pandemic. We've said, we've recognized that the vast majority, closing in on 80% of Canadians, did the right thing during this pandemic, kept their distances, wore their masks, washed their hands 25 times a day, stayed home when they could, delivered in when they could, and mostly got vaccinated. We are leading the world on vaccinations. And as good as this government was in getting enough doses for everyone months ahead of schedule, the credit goes to Canadians themselves who listened to science, who made those sacrifices, who did the right thing, got vaccinated to protect themselves and their loved ones. And now, as we look at this fall, we all have an opportunity to get back a little more to normal. Except that those people who have not yet chosen to get vaccinated are putting all this at risk. Not only are they putting at risk our kids who are still too young to get vaccinated. I have a 7-year-old who started in grade 2 just earlier this week. Very excited about it, but he's vulnerable. I have friends who are immunocompromised, who are facing challenges around getting vaccinated. They are more vulnerable. And mostly, all of us, even if we did the right things and got vaccinated, are at risk of lockdowns because of future waves of unvaccinated, which nobody wants to go back to. And more than that, our economy can't afford to go back to. So you see conservative politicians like Erin O'Toole saying, you know what, we have to put the economy first. Well, you can't put the economy first if you're not serious about vaccinations. And that's why it's so shocking that he would roll back our plans to make sure that anyone on a plane or train is vaccinated, that anyone in the federal public service gets vaccinated, and that we work with the provinces on vaccine certification so that all of you who are vaccinated can go to movie theaters and gyms and restaurants without being worried that you're putting yourselves or your kids at risk because someone who is unvaccinated could be beside you. People have the choice. People may have the choice to not get vaccinated, but they don't have the choice to put my kids or your kids at risk. They don't get to make the choice to put the rest of our society at risk, and that's exactly what we're doing. Well, Mr. O'Toole doesn't have a plan for that. He won't be unequivocal on vaccines. He can't even guarantee that his candidates are all vaccinated. That's not the kind of leadership we need, either to get through the health crisis or to grow the economy again. And on so many other things, we've seen the same thing. Julie talked about the importance of $10 a day childcare. I am so excited about the fact that we're moving forward. And let's be honest, this pandemic allowed us to move much faster than we thought possible because the business community, corporate leaders, small businesses, all understood what we Liberals have known for a long time, that childcare isn't just a social program. It's an economic program for growth, for more people in the workforce, for more choices. So the business community said yes to $10 a day childcare, yes to 250,000 new quality childcare spaces across the country. And Erin O'Toole says, no, I don't think so. That's not the direction we need to go in. How can you look at the recession that hit women harder because of this pandemic and not say, you know what, childcare is how we get to real growth for the coming years, and that's exactly what this government has done and will continue to do right here in Ontario. And the other thing that is so fundamental to a pandemic and to this past year has been keeping Canadians safe. And we are serious, and you've seen how much this government stepped up to keep people safe, because part of keeping people safe was putting money in their pockets when they didn't have incomes coming in, was supporting our small businesses so they could stay strong and hold on so they can come bouncing back much quicker than most other countries around the world. As Julie pointed out, we've recovered 92% of all the jobs lost during the pandemic. The U.S. has only recovered about 75 or 76%. That is because we supported people. But part of keeping people safe is recognizing that we are seeing a spike in gun violence. We are seeing real challenges in communities as people struggle with mental health issues, as people go through the extra stress and tension that this year has brought. And yes, we need to be investing more in mental health, which is why we're proposing massive new transfers in mental health to make sure that everyone has accessible, quality mental health care supports that are there. But on guns, we've been unequivocal. Over the past 6 years, we have steadily increased gun control in this country, which included, last May, banning 1,500 different models of military-style assault weapons in this country. As of last May, hundreds of thousands of guns currently in circulation in this country that have as their only purpose to kill as many people as possible, as quickly and easily as possible, are now illegal to sell, illegal to buy, and illegal to use. That's what we did. Except, of course, because Erin O'Toole had to make a secret deal with the gun lobby to win the Conservative Party leadership, he committed in his platform that he would reverse our ban on 1,500 different types of military assault weapons. Shame on him. Shame on him for thinking that that's what Canadians want or need. More guns like the guns used in Moncton or at École Polytechnique or at Sandy Hook or at Vegas and in massacres around the world. More of those guns in our streets and in our communities, please. What? Not only is he proposing that completely offside with Canadians, over the past few days, he's tried to deceive Canadians about it. Oh, I meant the 1977 law. Oh, I sort of meant this one, but okay, now I'm going to say my platform is wrong. I'm going to rewrite my platform, which is actually, incidentally, sort of easy for him to do because nothing in his platform is costed. He hasn't bothered to show any of the numbers in his platform. So he can flip something in his platform, but what he says now, and listen for it, is, okay, we'll hold on to that law if we get hold on to that order in council if we get reelected, but we'll start a reclassification system for all the guns and work with the gun lobby to make sure that we get the right guns reclassified in what way. Reclassify them. They're already prohibited. There's no more prohibited classification for them. If he's going to reclassify them, it's his way of saying maybe he can bring them back. But the important thing is, he has tried to deceive Canadians and mislead them about his position. He tried on Thursday night in the French debate at TVA, and that's why we're all talking about it these days. But you have to know something about Erin O'Toole, that he has consistently said one thing to special interest groups and tried to convince its opposite to Canadians, whether that be in terms of pro-life groups, anti-abortion groups, whether that be in terms of climate change, where his party still doesn't believe that climate change is real, whether that's around the gun lobby, whether that's around anti-vaxxers, who he's allowing to run for him apparently because not all his candidates will accept to get vaccinated. And then he tries to tell Canadians, no, I'm a kinder, gentler kind of conservative. Well, I tell you, when you propose to face the biggest challenge of our era, climate change, by going back to Stephen Harper's approach on climate change, I'm sorry, we left that all behind us, and for good reason. Canada is now leading the world on a price on pollution and on so many other things on fighting climate change, on investments in renewables, on investments in technology, and he wants to bring us back? No, thank you. And that's the choice that Canadians are facing right now. And I know here in Davenport, there are wonderful progressives who want us to go even faster and even harder on all these big things. And I'll tell you, we are there for that, particularly on the environment. We know we need to go further and faster, which is why we are putting a cap on emissions from the oil and gas sector entirely. And we will be decreasing those emissions over the coming years. We're going to make zero-emission vehicles the only new vehicles you can buy in 2035, with 50% of all new vehicle sales in 2030 zero-emission. And the thing is, progressives fall into this regular pattern of saying, okay, well, the NDP are more ambitious, but we're more concrete in what we can achieve. Well, this election, that went right out the window. The NDP received a failing grade from top economists and top environmentalists, not just because their environmental plan is unachievable, but because it actually is unambitious, too. What happened to the NDP? They were supposed to push us to be even more ambitious. Turns out we don't need them to push us. We can be ambitious as Liberals all by ourselves and leave them in the dust. It's disappointing from the NDP that supposedly believes in the environment that they'd put forward something so haphazard and weak. They are even weaker than the Conservatives in their climate plan, and I don't even wrap my brain around that one, but that's where they are. So the choice in this election, which is an extremely important election, not just for ending this pandemic, but for building back better into the coming years and decades, couldn't be clearer. A real housing plan that's going to support people getting into new homes and crack down on predatory practices. $10 a day childcare across the country. More investments for family doctors and healthcare that are going to help us stay healthy with a universal healthcare system that is free and defended the way Canada always believes in it, despite Mr. O'Toole's desire to see more private delivery. I could go on, and I will go on over the course of this week, but right now, I'm just really looking forward to saying thank you to each and every one of you for the great work you're all doing on getting Julie re-elected. We need her in Ottawa. We need her to be your voice in Ottawa. So I need you to keep going, knocking doors, and making this difference. Merci beaucoup, mes amis. Merci d'être ici. Continuez le bon travail, et on choisit d'avancer ensemble. Merci.